Okay, we are back. So let's embrace the, change and motivate positivity amidst all of this weird chaos. We're going to be moving on from all of these, the topic of homelessness and what we can do about it, because honestly, there are strategic things that cities have been implementing to do about it. They've just kind of been on hold because of coronavirus, which they shouldn't be, because there's a lot of people out there that, because of the coronavirus issue and people being out of work and most of all kind of being scared of being isolated or even being away from resources that, like the hospital, etc., washing their hands, they would congregate together into camps, and maybe even there's going to be influx of a lot more homeless people, given that there's going to be so many more evictions happening in the US and even in Canada because of people not being able to pay their rent. So if we're just under this mindset that we're just going to sweep all of it under the rug and make it all pretty and put flower beds everywhere, that's not necessarily how we're going to combat this. We just have to come at it with like a clear, compassionate perspective where these people just straight up need a house. That's all we're going to leave that topic on today. And if you disagree and you think that there's some weird thing that they have to prove themselves, or that as people, because we have a house and we earn it and that we work hard for it, that they don't deserve one because they don't earn it and they don't work hard for it, that's just a bunch of dingus, and you can just walk away. There's nothing stopping you because you don't belong in these parts, partner. Or you can stay along for the ride and see what all the things that you are wrong about. So many sad thoughts over the past few weeks. No need to really discuss or sensationalize them into things. There's been like a string of tragedies lately. So be ruthless with systems and kind with people, as a wise old pal once told us. So we're going to keep going, and we're going to keep hitting, and we're going to keep on cherishing the little things, because they're oh so little and they might just go away. On to the super fun topic of secret police have been kidnapping protesting people. As a visible minority or a teenager on a skateboard, you too could be snatched up by an unidentified police officer in an unmarked van, taken where you hope it would be jail. They may get to see a lawyer after the government has used taxpayer dollars to enable skinhead jocks to unload childhood trauma with violence on them. This alternative universe is a reality experienced by brown people with foreign-sounding names since, of course, 9/11. But it's a new reality for just regular run-of-the-mill white teenagers who want to come and, roast the fascists in public, and they want to be there for their friends and their allies. And they're realizing, oh no, I'm also being subjugated by the police and being taken away into vans and intimidated in ways that I'm not accustomed to. This is a real problem. It's always been a real problem, but the media is like, oh wow, it's happening to everybody now. This is bad. The federal agents are now arresting people without probable cause in Portland because they protest racism in support of Black Lives Matter. These are now national protests that have been ongoing and going strong for over 2 months, going on 3. And this, the resistance from the police only gets stronger as the weeks go on, regardless if the majority of the protests have been peaceful and the outbursts of violence and chaos and etc. have either been perpetuated by questionable sources, or they're just like people acting out, being weird, or it's just a literal result of oppression, and that's just what a revolution and the optics of revolt look like. They look not so fun and not so fancy, kind of like what we were talking about before. Not everything's going to be peachy clean and appease the eyes of Karen mothers on Facebook. The biggest humanitarian crisis in Yemen is going on right now, and I still don't see a lot of people talking about that. When you hear Yemen, you automatically think of Chandler's reluctance to want to move there, and you don't really want to move to Yemen, but it's not because it isn't a rich place, not a rich place, very poor place. It's not a rich cultural and land with a lot of wonderful people there. That's not why you don't want to move there. Of course, if that was strictly the case, Chandler would love to go to Yemen, and it would be such a wonderful thing, and it would be cool, like moving to Egypt in the 90s, etc. But no, Yemen was not a fun place, and still isn't. It's because there has been an ongoing war, and it has been going on for a very long time, and since its inception, and the country of Yemen has gained a reputation of, not being such a fun place to go because they're often in conflict. It's not because the people of Yemen are like super aggressive and they just like want to conflict with everyone. It's just the governments and the political powers at be in Yemen's proximity just seem to be not having a lot of fun. So Yemen's war is much more layered than a Saudi Arabian Sunni Shia conflict. It's not that simple. Like there's just two sides to every story. There's so many different sides to everybody's different story. Without getting into details, I'm definitely not qualified to dictate. So the war was led by civilians. Sorry, I worded that so wrongly. It like totally changed the output of the situation. See, that's why it's so hard to read off of a teleprompter when you're talking about things like war. You could accidentally say the wrong thing. So the war has led the civilians to a brink of famine, and it was led by the government. Famine is not like poverty, where you can get out of it. The war has taken innumerable lives. Like, it's really hard even to research the amount of lives that have been taken by this conflict over the past, 20 or so years. Human Rights Watch has stated more than 20 million people in Yemen are experiencing food insecurity, and 10 million people are at risk of famine. And the innocent civilian, mind you, is what we're talking about here. We're not talking about, soldiers in Yemen. These people... The civilians are the target of the conflict, right? They're not fighting back unless they have to. I don't know the nitty-gritty details, but these people are civilians, right? And we have the United States just not, saying or doing anything because they're like, oh, cool, more conflict. And it's at the root of it, it's Saudi Arabia kind of poking all of these fires. And it's weird to think we live in a world where the U.S. is, both military and political allies with Saudi Arabia, because I grew up in a world where they were the bad guy, and I don't want to think that countries are bad guys, based on silly stereotypes like what was perpetuated after 9/11, but I was just, correct me if I'm wrong, I was under the impression that we didn't like those guys, especially the government. I mean, we like the people. Just why? Okay, so speaking of loving the people and not liking the government, what the heck is going on in Turkey? Right? So, rights groups We Will Stop Femicides platform says 146 women have been killed by men in the first half of 2020 in Turkey. So last year, 474 women were killed by men. According to the group, it was 440 as well in 2018. Turkey is a country that faces a stigma of being, aggressive. The people of Turkey will tell you that the harshness is met with a very unbelievable warmth as well. The society has a very totalitarian government that controls its media. So a lot of what you see about Turkey that isn't, written by people that are here on our side is approved by the Turkish government. So either on one side, you'll see a lot of things that are very favorable, or on the other side, you'll see things that are very bad. So I want you to not necessarily meet in a middle ground, but just understand that there's a little bit more nuance than what they have to bring to the table and what opposers have to bring to the table. You should probably listen to the people that live and grew up there. And, okay, so in essence, the free speech of its people is censored based on all of the government dictatorship that has been going on for a very long time. But this has kind of been conflicted with the culture that the people have had internally, And only recently, much like the United States, well, not only recently, it's just become more visible because of social media that there is a divide in the country, kind of like the United States, where people are, they don't really like what the government's putting down and they're trying to find ways around it. And the people that don't like the people that like to find ways around it, like to commit violence and be angry and do bad things. So that's what we hear about it. It's not all like that. So, the people of Turkey, particularly women of Turkey, need your help. They need your help in fighting actual violence from men. And this isn't but women also get beaten up too. No, this is one of those situations where it's literally men in a society that has had a lot of connotations with oppression of women is taking a stance of doing it more and more and more in public ways to women that are trying to just live normal lives like you or I. So there was this campaign made by a few activists to help women feel a little less hopeless in the faces of these things and try to get rid of femicides. And a femicide is kind of like when you hear the word infanticide, like it's the strategic killing of a baby, not like an abortion. It's like I want to kill this baby because it's a baby, and then you kill it. That's what an infanticide is. So a femicide is I want to kill this woman because she's a woman. It's not a murder. So that's why we're not saying stop female murder or like stop murder. It's like let's stop femicides. Like a femicide is very different, fundamentally different than a murder because it is automatically perpetuated by a aggressive male, or maybe I don't know if a femicide can be facilitated by another woman, or maybe that's what it qualifies as. But I'm not an expert on the terminology of murder. But let's just say there's going to be people in the comments of some of these videos, probably not mine because I will delete them, of people who are anti-feminists saying, oh, well, not all men are like this. Well, when we're talking about femicides in Turkey, the men that participate in the femicides, yeah, it is all men. We need to stop all the men that are doing all the femicides, okay? So we're not going to spend time being like, hey, but these people aren't like that. We know who isn't like that, because everyone who doesn't commit a murder or commit a femicide isn't one of those people, right? So just we're not having that conversation of not all men or not all women or, oh my gosh, men also experience violence, because yeah, men do also experience violence, but we're talking about femicides right now. That's particularly perpetuated towards women. In many ways, it can feel kind of hopeless to want to help women really, really far away. But here are some resources for charities that will help finance these women's shelters in Istanbul, because what we really need to help these women is financing their independence, in like their financial independence. They need to be able to live on their own and to buy their own things, because that's the control that these men and these societies have over women, whether it's Western culture, whether it's Middle Eastern culture, Asian culture, etc. It's always just about financial control, and that goes into abusive relationships between women and men as well, or even lesbian relationships, or bisexual relationships, or non-binary people, etc. There's all sorts of nuanced conversations that you could be having about, is somebody more physically powerful or are they intimidating? But really, when it comes to oppressing somebody, it's about money and how much money they have and what kind of access to resources to get away they have. So it's very good to keep awareness that financing women's independence in Middle Eastern countries, particularly Istanbul, is the best way to go. And how we achieved that is by posting some photos online that got people interested in the topic, and now celebrities are financing women's shelters in Istanbul. That's the power of those weird internet trends if implemented properly. So Turkish people are often forgotten by the Western culture hemisphere, I've just noticed. So the Turkish people are their own humans. They don't really they're not a monolith of their government, much like when you hear someone from Venezuela or maybe someone from Taiwan. I mean, I'm pretty good friends, or was good friends with someone from Taiwan, and they are not their government. They are nothing to do with the conflicts that they have dealt with in their life. They just have solidarity and comfort and love for a country that, you know, maybe doesn't have the best record in many cases, but they still love their country just like you like the United States. I mean, come on. So there's going to be people out there that are a little bit prideful of countries, and it's important to remember that the countries are not their government, and we need to help finance these people. Domestic abuse is largely enabled by the lack of financial freedom for the victim, so it's really, really, really important that you just kind of forget about your not liking different governments, or maybe not liking different things to do with different people, because they're just people. And I've always had a fondness for Turkey, obviously. So it's a very important document, and there has been talks about them wanting to take out, like, there's been speculation that they could withdraw from the Istanbul Convention, but the idea is that they're not going to, and that was all just kind of a big rumor to just get people angry and to get people to act violent and to do things in very similar fashion that the U.S. government has been doing, which is divide and conquer their people. They've noticed, the Turkish government at least has noticed, that there's been a rise of kind of a little bit of progressive fire, and they do not like it. They're a country that really, really depends on control of information. And in a place where freedom of information is oh so plentiful, like the internet, they need to find a way to gain more of a stranglehold on those extremist people that reside in the country. And that is through making it seem like women are doing bad things and they need to be punished, etc. Kind of radicalizing these, in a way, like incel individuals in Turkey. And the U.S. just kind of ignores these issues because they think, well, not the U.S. like government, I mean like the U.S. people, like you or I, see these stories and they think, oh, well, you know, it's just like that there. And it's not just like that there. For centuries and decades, there's been people that have not been hurt and oppressed by the people that they love and are supposed to depend on them. But there are situations where it does happen, and where it does happen, these women do not have any government resources to help them, let alone any money. And they also live in kind of a culture that has them depend on the man. So when the man sucks, they have no options. So we need to help these women without changing the fundamental aspects of what makes these cultures unique and why they like to be a part of them. We're not going to go and be like, I don't like the way that you do this, so we're just going to make everything the way it is in the West, because the West ain't perfect either. And I do not like that superiority complex that so many Western people have, that, oh, we're so much better to our women. Or like when anti-feminists are having this conversation being like, oh, well, Western feminists are so lazy when there's so many women in other countries that could be getting all the help, when they're not out there helping the other women in other countries. They're just literally bringing them up as like a prop, which is so cheap and so lame, and I don't like it. So every time that one of those people brings up that combination of words, you know that you don't have to continue that conversation, because they're probably don't value you or your words. They just want to hear themselves talk. So give no fucks, take no orders, defund the police, and fuck the borders. No justice, no peace. Thank you so much for tuning in to my Politerotica podcast thingy type of whatever the heck this is. I am super done with talking. If you like content like this, continue to watch it. So we've gone over homeless people. We've talked about some world news stuff. So yeah, tune in next week and we'll be talking about Nazis. Isn't that super fun? Have a spooky day.